Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison here to continue our free agent talk. Not really with free agents, but with winners of free agency. So these are people that, it's not really, they're not on new teams. They're not shiny new toys. They're not, but things either got better for them or things didn't get worse. I guess you're still the winner if things don't get worse for you, right? That's
right.
At least that's how I like to think about life, and to keep me with a little bit of a positive mind frame. Like, today wasn't worse than yesterday. Victory.
Winner. Yeah.
And depending on the day, chicken dinner. Okay, so let's talk. The first person we have is a winner in free agency is Tennessee quarterback Will Levis. And of course, Will Levis is a winner because he has wide receiver extraordinaire. I'm so excited to talk about Calvin Ridley that I just couldn't even speak straight. Calvin Ridley got that bag to go sign in Tennessee and be, I'm going to call him the wide receiver one. I love me some DeAndre Hopkins, but, not too much tread left on the tires, a little long in the tooth. Pick your cliche for him being old, and I'm there for it. Again, I love me some hashtag Team Clemson big wide receiver. As DeAndre Hopkins is, but you're 31, man.
Ridley's like a year younger than him.
2 years.
Oh, my bad.
Been in the league, what is it, like 3 or 4 years less, but is only like 2 years younger. Yeah. I like the idea of Will Levis. I like the idea of Will Levis in what should be a much more pass-friendly offense than it has ever been in recent memory in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. We had years and years of Derrick Henry. Then before that, we had 2 or 3 years of DeMarco Murray being the best running back who was ever born. And I don't even know if the Tennessee Titans existed before that. So
Chris Johnson, CJ2K.
Oh, yeah, because my mind went to Bishop Sankey, and I wanted to skip over that.
I just wanted to not remember that.
Yeah. So, earlier than that, we go back to Chris Johnson, where, CJ2K, that was some fun to watch football. But we're talking about Will Levis. We're talking about the year 2024, and we are talking about a 12-team Superflex trade where Jackson Smith and Jigba and Will Levis were sent for Chris Olave, JSN and Will Levis for Chris Olave. JSN in at 391, Will Levis 124 for a total of 514, Chris Olave 603. So the analyzer has this pretty in favor of Chris Olave, especially when considering, well, this is a little twofold, right? Because I'm going to go out on a limb and say you don't want Will Levis as your QB1 in a Superflex league.
Ooh, that's quite the assumption there, Russ.
It's a ledge. It's not a big ledge. I don't feel safe on that ledge. You don't want Will Levis as your QB1, but still, you're sending away a QB without getting one back. So there's that little bit of tax on that side, but we also have the 2-for-1 tax on the other side. So at best, this still should be even, and it's not. I mean, we're talking at almost 100 points, which is late second,
late second, yeah, something like that.
But still, when we're talking about Chris Olave and JSN, who I don't know if I have them that super far apart, and they're a good 200 something points, 210 points. I think I'm good with this. I think I like this trade. I think if you want to take the bet on Will Levis in this offense with Hopkins, with Ridley, with Chigakonko finally being involved after having a good season two seasons ago, that I think this is a nice way to do it, because while we love Chris Olave, we have him ranked pretty highly. It's still a little based on hopes. It's still based on he should be able to do this. They still have Derek Carr as their quarterback, which is not great. Even if they had, they didn't even keep Winston, so I have no idea who their backup is. So if you're not in on the idea that Chris Olave can be a top 12 producing wide receiver, I think this is a brilliant move, because I don't think you're downgrading too much at the wide receiver position by going from Olave to JSN, and you're getting a pretty high upside quarterback. Is he talented enough to pull himself to that top tier of players, of quarterbacks? No. Does he run enough to get himself to that top tier of quarterbacks? Again, no. But like I said before, that's not really what we're thinking of Will Levis. I mean, if Will Levis can piece together a QB 14 season or two in a row, that feels like a huge victory for this trade.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I'm thinking the difference between these two wide receivers should lie.
Yeah. I'm completely with you on this, that because I've been sliding off of Chris Olave in recent weeks. The Tyler Lockett signing didn't necessarily help my overall opinion of JSN. But if they do run more base 3 wide receiver sets and JSN has the ability to get out there and fight for targets by being on the field, I think that's a good thing, because I think that he can win with those targets and be a better target receiver than Tyler Lockett at this point in both of their careers. So I think I'm willing to take the bet on Will Levis for this kind of a trade. I feel like I would want maybe if you're not the biggest JSN believer, you could go for another kind of wide receiver in that big old mix. Like if it was T. Higgins or JSN's teammate DK Metcalf, or any of those other kind of weird wide receiver twos kind of thing. I think that this still ends up working out. Really though, this is just kind of to go and buy low still on Will Levis. I was shocked. This is a super flex trade analyzer number of 123 for Will Levis for a starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, I'm glad that we're past the point that not every starting quarterback deserves to be valued as a first round pick in super flex, because they definitely don't. But I think Will Levis has shown enough upside and is still young enough and has received enough weapons and the new upgrade in coaching and offensive staff. We didn't even mention that he's also got Tony Pollard now as a catching weapon out of the backfield, on top of getting Calvin Ridley, and an offensive coach that has come from Joe Burrow. So I think that Levis is definitely going to be a big winner. And, he did fine. Like after his massive, top 5 QB week as his first
4 touchdowns with no interceptions isn't like that. That was unfair to give us in his first performance.
It took him 3 games to get back to that same point value that he gave us there. But I mean, he offered back in QB2 production for the large majority of the remainder of the games. QB 21, QB 18, 22, 20, 21. 26 was like kind of like the worst game that he had. Like it wasn't great. It's not a lot of upside, but he was a rookie who started at the back end of the season, only really had DeAndre Hopkins, still in a run-first offense. And he himself didn't even run at all last year either. That was a big part of his game coming out of Kentucky, out of college, that he was a very mobile Josh Allen level of mobility for a quarterback. And he did not run at all last year. He had basically every single game, he had less than 10 rushing yards. So if he opens up that aspect of his skill level, on top of the new receiving weapons that he has and a more pass-friendly offense, I'm not saying that he's going to be a breakout quarterback or anything, but like you said, like a mid to high QB2 is not out of the range of possibilities for him. And that it's a huge win. Exactly like you said.
Exactly. What's important to remember is, at cost is what we're talking about. Right. Yes. You for 123.9 in the analyzer, being able to pull someone who can score as the QB 14 is a huge win.
Right.
So let's go on to this next one, which I think is a lot more relevant and easily digestible to think of value. And that's straight up Will Levis for a 25 first. Will Levis still 123.9, a 25 first, 259.1. Now there is a big gap in here, but I also think for everything Addison just listed, Will Levis's value is going to go up. But even before the point scoring season starts, and by the time we see a couple of games, I believe Will Levis will do well enough to push his value up to that mid 200s area. That point where you see him more value wise as a QB2 on your team as opposed to 3. And in that, like, even now spending a 25 first for that, because how many like QB 14, 15s, I wish I had anything pulled up for me to look at names, would you send away a 25 first for? You probably want more. So to be able to get Will Levis for a 25 first, I think is a perfect trade. I think if you don't believe in Levis, you take that you take that first and you feel good about it. And if you do believe in Levis, a 25 first feels like nothing to send for someone who might be your QB2.
Right. Or maybe you already have a couple QB2s. Like you have a good one, you have a solid two, like a Brock Purdy kind of two, but you're like, you know what? I could inject some upside with a QB3 that maybe I either get a much larger ROI in a trade later on, or maybe Levis replaces my QB2, and then that QB2 then becomes expendable or something down the road. And I think if you believe in Will Levis that way with the 2025 first, especially if you're a contender, you have a solid team. Most likely you're hoping that it's going to be a playoff team, ideally a deep playoff team, a championship team. So that's a later 2025 first. I mean, next year, just looking ahead at the quarterback class alone next year, it is entirely possible that Will Levis could have been the QB1 or could be the QB1 if he came out next year, compared to a lot of the other quarterbacks in next year's class. A lot still has to happen, but, there is definitely a world where Levis could have been the best prospect compared to Drew Aller or Quinn Ewers or Shador Sanders. There's solid names, but there's still work that needs to be done, to where if you just can get Will Levis, a guy who seems like he has at least a solid leash for 2 years, I feel like, in this offense, there's a ton of upside there. I don't mind that if you are a Levis believer, but I do agree. Like you said, if you don't believe in Will Levis, cash out on the first. That's a pretty good trade there too.
All right, hold on. Let me scroll. Our next player, George Pickens. Now, this guy was a little bit of a winner and having not absolutely. I forgot that Russell Wilson was free agency, but losing Deontay Johnson in the wide receiver room was not free agency. So the free agency period was a very big win for George Pickens. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe when Pickens was playing without Deontay Johnson, his numbers were just very good. I'm going to leave it at that. He was.
I do have the numbers actually.
Double-digit targets and lots of yards, and I'm just going to make stuff up until Addison pulls them up because
he averaged 16.1 fantasy points per game. I don't have the averages, but the pace was over 1,500 yards and 9 touchdowns on 140 targets in 4 games without Deontay last year.
Now, imagine those numbers not with Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky throwing the ball, but with Russell Wilson throwing the ball. Now, again, of course, Russell Wilson is not Seahawks. It's amazing.
I was going to say that doesn't sound as much of an upgrade, but it is an upgrade, especially when we saw what Russell Wilson did for Cortland Sutton last year, who I think is a very similar caliber of a player.
Exactly. I still think of Russell Wilson nowadays as a massive upgrade to Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky, even though, again, he is not the Russell Wilson we remember. And man, even if it does ends up being Justin Fields somehow, that is still an upgrade from Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. So
absolutely.
Now, keep in mind, they're going to draft a wide receiver. They have to. They literally have to.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one else on the roster worth mentioning.
Calvin Austin.
Denzel Mims.
Great names. Yep, they're going to draft somebody. They're going to pull a Pittsburgh Steelers and somebody's going to fall to them in the second round, like Adonai Mitchell or somebody's going to like fall to them in the second round, or they'll figure something out.
Yeah, they're good at drafting round 2 wide receivers, so it's going to happen again. But
it's
still,
Lad McConkey and make me mad, but whatever.
It won't matter to George Pickens. That's where I'm kind of sitting at. I think George Pickens is safe as their X. He's their number 1 target, except for over the middle is the only time Pat Freiermuth thrives. He's the only person they throw to over the middle. Everyone else just go through the numbers.
You're assuming that Russell Wilson can see the middle of the field, though.
Well, let's get to the trade. It is a 12-team Superflex trade of George Pickens and the 209 for Jackson Smith and Jigba. See, there's that hype already. Pickens 269.3, the 209 117 for a total of 386.3. JSN 390.5 by himself. See, this is me taking advantage of the Pickens hype and going and get the guy I like so much better. I don't see this the other way around. This is giving up on JSN and buying into the Pickens hype, which I guess if that's how you feel, I get it, but I'm not there. So I'm completely on JSN on this one.
I might take this might be one of those trades where it's like whichever side had the second on it, I was just going to take that one because Pickens and JSN to me are pretty similar to the degree that they're probably in the same tier. But I mean, I totally understand. Like, you're just like, JSN was was so much better of a prospect than Pickens coming out and still has the hype and stuff like that. But I think I think I've somehow found myself above the market on George Pickens. That wasn't really intentional, but I just feel like I've elevated Pickens' value because Deontay's not there. Deontay was the primary reason why Pickens was not producing well, because he could not beat out Deontay Johnson for targets. Deontay's not there, and unless the rookie that they bring in is going to steal targets away from George Pickens because he's that much better than Pickens. Pickens is the wide receiver one. Like, this was the situation that I think everybody was waiting for. And now that it's here, nobody wants it. I don't know if that's Arthur Smith. I don't know if that's Russell Wilson, combination of both. Don't know what that is, but I found myself above market on George Pickens. I put out a poll on Twitter right after the Deontay Johnson trade of him versus every single wide receiver that was above him on Keep Trade Cut at the time of the Deontay trade. And he lost handedly every single one of these polls except for him versus Jordan Addison. Apparently people would prefer him over JSN. And the only other one that was close was 50-50 between him and Flowers. So that basically means that Pickens, according to the people that voted in these polls, did not gain value with Deontay gone. So
I will say I'd actually take Pickens over Flowers because just the upside alone in that offense is there. But I'm not super high on Pickens, even though I see the upside there. I'd be willing to stick with someone like JSN or someone who I liked the talent more, or we've seen the production more already.
Sure.
But Flowers, I think, was just way too bolstered by Andrews not being there. But that's not really what we're here to talk about. Let's go to the next trade because it's another very interesting conversation. George Pickens, still 12-team Superflex. George Pickens, James Cook, and a 25-second for Garrett Wilson. At the moment, it looks like Garrett Wilson is the only pass catcher on that team. I am glad this whole Aaron Rodgers, first of all, two things. It appears Aaron Rodgers is not running for vice president of the United States, so that's great. And also the rumors of Rodgers trying to bring Devontae Adams have seemed to have died down a bit. That was a thing for a little bit, and I hated it because I love me some Garrett Wilson. But George Pickens, 269, James Cook, 252, 25-second, 83 for a total of 604. Garrett Wilson by himself, 673.8. So 3-1 in favor of the one, which is never a good sign in the first place. There's a lot of personal bias that goes into this trade. These are not three easily valued players right now.
Right.
Because everything we've talked about with Pickens, James Cook is hot and cold in the first place as a player, no less the running back in Buffalo is a hot button topic in general because the running back one is number 17 and a 25-second is just nice, I guess. Garrett Wilson is the pure, to me, talent first situation. But again, assuming Aaron Rodgers can play for more than 30 seconds this season, the situation got better for Garrett Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question then becomes, would I give up Pickens and James Cook to go get what I think Garrett Wilson can be? And the second. I think I do. I think this can bite you. I really do think that there is a chance that Pickens and Cook score well enough that you kind of might be unhappy on the production side. But I really do feel like Garrett Wilson, again, assuming a somewhat healthy Aaron Rodgers, takes that leap up to solid wide receiver one production, because he's been solid wide receiver two with guys I literally can't remember anymore.
There's too many names in there.
Jake Boyle? What was Boyle's name?
Tim Boyle.
I've been watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so I just have Charles Boyle stuck in my head, which everybody should go watch if you've never watched. I think I take Garrett Wilson in this. To me, it's one of those nice trade-ups where take a wide receiver two, take a running back two, and give me this guy I think is a wide receiver one. I know the analyzer doesn't show it, but it does feel like a strong offer to me, and it is, which is why I'm thinking about it. But the more I think about it, just give me Garrett Wilson. Give me the guy I love in what should be a better situation than he's been in.
Totally agree. This is a fantastic way to capitalize on hype and just go and get a better player. Yeah, I'm all for. I want to trade up at the wide receiver position. If I've got to use a James Cook kind of a player to do that, then I will do that instead of some other wide receiver that you have maybe who's valued very similarly. But this does really feel like hype on that whole on this side. It's the George Pickens hype post the Deontay Johnson trade. James Cook got some hype from Matthew Berry wrote an article about here's like 25 things that I heard at the combine while I was there. And James Cook got a puff piece mention in there that the Bills were looking at utilizing him more as a workhorse and a pass catching threat, along with Dalton Kincaid's progression in year 2. And that was mainly between Diggs, Cook, and Kincaid. That was kind of going to be the core of their offense. And they were going to run through all three of them, essentially. So Cook's usage kind of potentially could go up. And I think his value went up from that too. But
2 things. Russ, learn to read so you can read these things. 2, Buffalo has talked about passing to the running back and getting tight ends more involved in their offense for the past at least 3 years.
Yep. Yeah. Which that goes kind of towards my point, and also I think your point as well too, that just utilize that hype.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
go get Garrett Wilson, man. I truly believe that Garrett Wilson is in for a massive season with a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers, and this is a perfect way to do that.
Yep. All right, let's scroll down. Player 3, Rashee Rice. Whew. The day this comes out is Thursday. The day my Trading Post article comes out is Thursday. The topic of my Trading Post article is the reason Rashee Rice is a winner in free agency because the Chiefs signed Marquise Hollywood Brown, which I love for both of them. We have seen Kansas City try and get that down the field guy, and it hasn't worked. Hollywood will work. He's good. Why that's even better. What worries me a little bit about Hollywood in Kansas City is he might turn into one of those better for real football than better for fantasy guys.
Oh, I hope not. I don't
and
think he
that's
will.
Because getting a down the field guy who's that good will free up the middle for Kelsey and for Rashee Rice. Well, Rashee Rice is like free up the bubble screens, right?
Bubble screens and slant routes.
Yeah. So I think that's why, at least to me, we didn't talk about this because why should we ever be prepared for anything? Like, to me, that's why Rashee Rice is a winner in free agency. I just want to double check that you're on the same page as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kansas City getting Hollywood Brown, who I absolutely love. And I agree. I think this is perfect for both of them. This is the 1-year prove it deal for Hollywood with the best quarterback in the NFL operating in a space where he does not have to be the one. He does not have to be the guy. And he could really just play his role to perfection. And also kind of ish back a little bit into hometown. I don't know where he's originally from, but he went to college at Oklahoma. So maybe there's some fun in that as well, too. That's just a narrative. But like you said, it allows Rashee Rice to they're not the same wide receiver. This is like why Jameson Williams was not going to really impact Amon-Ra St. Brown. They do not operate the same space. They do not do anything remotely similar. And they're going to be on the field at the same time. So this is great for Rice, great for Hollywood. And I'm actively looking to see if anybody who has Rashee Rice is panicking about this, because I want to go buy.
So that's why I love that we're talking about him. So I'm really curious to look at some of these trades and see if I'm ready to buy in or not. So we have 12-team 1 quarterback where Rashee Rice himself was traded for the 107 and 205. And I can tell you right now, I'm taking Rice in this deal. Rice in at 453.8, the 107 at 396, the 205 at 144. Man, so after seeing what we saw out of Rashee Rice, who was in a 1 quarterback league, probably around the 107-ish last year anyway. I don't play in any 1 quarterback league, so I don't really know, but he was an early second in Superflex. And there was the 3 quarterbacks up top. Yeah. So he was probably around that 110 area. So it was probably a little later than that. But still, he definitely gained his value, right? So at the top of 1 quarterback drafts this year, we have Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, locked and set. And again, any order you feel like putting them in. I mean, I think that I keep going to say James Worthy. That's not the right Worthy. Xavier Worthy threw himself up there. And then we still have players like, and I go to say, there's too many people with similar names to other people. If anyone's the Replacements movie fan, I keep going to say Clifford Franklin instead of Troy Franklin. and I hope he has better hands than Clifford Franklin did. And Brian Thompson Jr. So, but even still, naming those guys, we're at like 7, and there's a lot of maybes still. All of those players I listed should get first round draft capital in the NFL. Where they get drafted, meaning what pick they get drafted and what team they go to, still has a lot to play into that. So if you're right now saying, I don't want to take that risk, just give me Rashee Rice at the 107, I call that a huge win.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic trade. And I mean, like, in the trade analyzer, I had Rice in the 107 in there in a super flex league before I changed it over to the 1 quarterback one, and it was dead even in super flex.
Yeah.
So that already means that Rashee Rice needs to be put in the Odunze Bowers category, which in 1 quarterback is the 1.03, 1.04, which I don't think you're moving up from the 107 to the 103, 104 with just a 2.05.
Notice I didn't even mention the 205 in a 1 quarterback draft.
It just did not.
It's a fun dart throw, but it does not weigh at all in this.
Yeah, so I'm very easily taking Rashee Rice on this one. He's going to be such a better wide receiver to have on your roster than any of the rookies there that you could possibly have, like Franklin or Worthy or Adonai Mitchell.
And again, these guys absolutely can hit. They can get drafted early and do really well. But again, it could even be a boat. It could even be Rashee Rice. So if you like the player of Rashee Rice and want that sure thing that we've seen do it, this is so easy to go do.
Yep.
And again, if you're selling Rice, yeah, like that 205 should be like the 111 for me. Like it needs to be up there. It needs to be a first. And I even said 111 and felt like, yeah, that's probably a little late. Like that needs to be like the 107 and the 109, like 2 very strong dart throw picks at wide receiver. So next trade is a little bit more interesting because it's 2 similar situations, and it's Rashee Rice and Marvin Mims for Nico Collins. So we're talking about 2. I mean, one of them is relatively young. Nico Collins is 25, even though he hasn't been in the league all that long. Even, we started with our Calvin Ridley came into the league late. So did Nico Collins. But still, Nico crushed it. The Texans did nothing at wide receiver in free agency, I don't think.
They haven't. No, they did offer a 3rd round pick for Keenan Allen.
Because that's just what you do. If Keenan Allen's available, you offer for Keenan Allen.
You try to go get Keenan Allen.
Looks like that's what you do as a team.
Yeah.
But exactly, and I'm not. It's funny. At the end of the season, I was saying that if the Texans were to do something at wide receiver, I'd be more worried about the Nico Collins role than I would the Tank Dell role. Yep. But I think I'm past it. Like, I think they would have been more likely to spend the money on a guy, if go trade for Higgins, to spend on Mike Evans, or because that we had that strong Texas. Evans played at A&M, right? Texas A&M.
Yep.
So we had that that tie together, and they didn't do it. They didn't really go for anyone at all, and I don't think you do that in the draft at this point when you have
they traded back. They were the team Minnesota traded up. Yeah. So they traded out of the 1st round. So they don't even have a 1st rounder anymore.
Yeah, the 2nd round wide receivers in this draft are still going to be pretty good. But
it's
again,
but
you're right. That adds to the not worrying. That even lessens the amount of worry I had left. And I think they're going in with their main path, and they re-signed Dalton Schultz to another year, I think. Yep. So they're going in with Tank Dell and Nico Collins being their main pass catchers. So I am not worried at all. So I don't care about Marvin Mims being thrown in to make that swap. I'm not really a fan of same position, same tier trades. But again, if you want to get off of a player you have that you don't like, and this is all it takes, go do it. Mm-hmm. So this is perfectly fine, and I don't care about which side you take because I think they'll both be great.
Yeah, I don't like Marvin Mims, so I wish that he was a different. If I was selling Nico Collins, Marvin Mims would be a different piece for me. But I really like the trade overall in terms, because in March.
Wait, no, I'm interrupting you because does that mean that you do have Collins worthwhilely above Rice?
Worthwhilely, no. I would consider. I think they're
Or
both
like
in
Mims
that
is
massive.
0 to you? Is Mims like 0 value to you?
I don't want Mims at
So
all.
yeah, that okay. So that helps. So like another player worth around that 100-ish in the analyzer, is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Or are you saying you needed to be stronger?
No, yeah, that's okay for me. It wouldn't be Mims. If it was
Okay. Okay.
Dontavian Wicks, I would, I'm in on that. Or if it was some other
Fair.
running back or something like that in that value.
Very
It's
fair. Very
not
fair.
Mims.
Okay. So you have my permission to keep talking now.
Yeah. But I mean, in March DLF ADP, Nico was the wide receiver 13. Rashee Rice was wide receiver 21. Now I feel like that's kind of like the top and the near the bottom ish of the big long chunk of wide receiver twos that I keep talking about. Um, so I think they're still like in the same tier, but they're pretty far apart in the same tier, at least in terms of consensus. I would have them closer. And I wouldn't fault anybody that had Rice over Nico as well, too. I'm probably pretty close to that. But if you are trying to take advantage of consensus value, or you know that somebody values Nico Collins in your league a lot, and you're able to do Nico for Rice and some other really good piece that could offer some value upside or production upside, then I am totally in on making that swap.
But that's it. That's the end of the players we're talking about. If we missed a player in here, let us know. Throw in the comments if there's someone that's still, because I mean, free agency it's absolutely wound down, but a lot happened, a lot passed. So if there's someone you still wants to talk about, let us know. But for that, this has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at Amaze Hayes _. We'll catch you next time.